So good morning, everyone. Uh, Today we are going to take a very interesting topic, which each and every one of us uses at every moment of our life, but in an not an involuntary way, but unknowingly. And that is the brain, how it functions. And as a graphologist, my interest is how brain functions when we are writing. So welcome to the topic of the science of handwriting, exploring the brain and hand connection. So briefly about me, I'm a handwriting influencer and a graphoanalytical therapist. I'm a seasoned entrepreneur since 1998 in various industries like advertising, branding, and began my graphology journey in 2009 and seeing its immense benefits. It's like my mission now to empower individuals through this simple and powerful tool of handwriting, which we all have learned since we were 6 years. So that's what I'm on a mission of. And platforms like this and Shabana ji, and the entire team helping me to actually spread the word. So thankful for that. And diving into the topic of the brain and the handwriting. So we will just briefly touch upon these subjects because the entire functioning of brain and how it travels into our fingers is a huge topic of interest. There are various studies going on across the world of how the brain, different parts of brain get activated when you're writing, when you're doing some other tasks, and having a comparative study of what activity benefits what part of the brain. So there is a lot of research, a lot of conclusions, a lot of different parameters with which the scientists are every day exploring this subject, because brain is one part of our body which science is still figuring out. So I would like to show you a wonderful visual, and this visual talks about the brain connections that are there at the time of birth, when we are around 7 years of age, and then when we are around 15 years of age. There is also a story of when we are 40 and 60, but currently we will uh, see the difference here. Now, a very simple example is that if I have a car and I have to travel from Mumbai to Delhi, I can do that because there is a road existing. But I have a car and I want to travel from here to Maldives. I really can't do it because the road is not directly connecting. So till the time the roadways are not there, it is not easy for me to reach that destination. Similarly, in brain, these roadways, we call it as neural pathways. When a child is born, the neural pathways are so few. So if you see, the child can only do 2, 3 things. The child can cry, the child can sleep, the child can move their hands and legs, and that's about it. Every day when we talk to the child, when we expose them to different things, when we take them out, their eyes are absorbing everything. And as they observe and absorb, the neural connections start building up. So if you notice at the age of 7, this is the amount of neural connections that are there because they are observing everything. They are absorbing everything, whether it is needed or not needed. And if you see the child at that age, the child is hyper curious, hyperactive, wants to go all around the place. There's a flame, they want to try how is the fire, what's the experience. So they are very curious and they are all around the place. So there are plenty of neural connections, as you see. Over a period of time, they realize that some of these connections are not, they don't use it that often, or they, because they don't practice it again and again. Some of the neural connections, they just kind of filter out, they break down. So typically at 15 years of age, only those neural connections are strong, which we keep using. And that's why, there is this think of, that early habits go a long way, because later on to recreate those connections take time. So this slide is there to show you the significance of the neural connections and how everything and anything that you do is because there is a neural connection. If for some reason the neural connection of, let's say, uh, of let's say, for some reason the speech gets disconnected, you will not be able to talk. So that's how important the neural connection is. It's for everything and anything that we do, from the moment we wake up, from the moment we brush, from the moment we get ready, and all of it. So that's the significance of neural pathways. And understanding that, let us move ahead and see that when a child, is learning to write, now I will get specific about how it pertains to the topic of handwriting. Now, as you see here, when the child begins to write, if the child has to write a letter A, today for us, writing letter A is like child's play. But for the child, it's not child's play. They struggle to make the straight line. And if they have learned to make a straight line, then it's difficult to make a diagonal line. So they learn all of this. And letter A is pretty complicated. I mean, there are two diagonal lines at two different angles. And then there is a vertical, and then there is a horizontal line connecting the two. And if you see the different stages of how the child gets into writing the letter A, till the time the last slide, the last, stage comes in, the neural connections are trying different ways of writing the diagonal lines and the second diagonal line. So the neural connections are trying till the time that the perfect combination is there. Two diagonal lines like this and a horizontal line. Then the brain says, okay, this is how A should be. And then the brain remembers that neural connection, and the other connections that they were trying, कि वो meet नहीं हो रहा है, lines कहीं और जा रही, those connections fade out. And that's how our brain functions. And handwriting is a beautiful combination of the motor skills. And it enhances memory, learning, and all of that. And why that happens is because writing, holding a pen in itself is an activity. You will find that as kids, when they have to hold a pen, they will initially hold like this, then they will hold like this, then they will hold probably like this. So they will experiment with all of this till the time they get a proper grip on the pen. So that requires a lot of activity inside the brain. The hand-eye coordination. I will come to this a little more in detail in the other slide. The spatial awareness. Initially, if you have noticed, when children write, if they are writing, I am, let's say, my name is, let's say, Dr. Ruchika. So there won't be much space between I and AM and DR. They will all be kind of written together, because that understanding of spacing is yet to develop in the children. So that's how the handwriting and the brain development is related. And that's why writing, even in the early years, is very critical. In terms of, development, the developed nations like US at one point in time thought that because digital is the way of the world, they reduced handwriting in the school years, the initial years, and they saw its impact on the education, on the abilities of the child, that undue relying on digital, what it did to the brain development. So today there are bills passed in US where it is compulsory for children to again begin writing in school years. And some of the states have even gone ahead and said, Ki cursive likho, write cursive. But the important point is that write. And that's how important handwriting is in the brain development of the child. The neuroscience of writing. There is everyday research being done in various universities of how, if you see the lady there, she's writing on one side and then she's typing on the other side. And these are all, the gadgets put up to record the brain activity for everything that she did, whether she was writing or whether she was typing or whether she was reading, taking the instructions. So a lot of such experiments, as I said, are done every day. What some of the relevant findings when it comes to handwriting is what I will be sharing now. How handwriting enhances the brain function and the motor skills. So what are the regions of brain that are involved in this beautiful activity of writing? Without getting into the technical details, there are, and for me, the interest of brain comes more from the space of writing rather than brain as a total organ in itself. So what are the brain regions involved? There's the motor cortex. It controls the voluntary movements of the hands, of the fingers. The cerebellum coordinates the fine motor skills and the balance. When it comes to motor skills, there are two kinds of motor skills. One is the gross motor skills, which are more about the bigger movements, like catching the ball. I mean, where you're moving your entire hand, for example. The fine motor is when you are using these muscles, like for more tinier activities. So handwriting is in a way more of fine motor skill than the gross motor skill. The prefrontal cortex, it's involved in planning, decision making, complex thinking. The Broca's area, that's the language production. So as you see, these are the way the experiments are done to understand that what part of the fingers is impacting what part of the brain. And in terms of graphology, the even detailed study of when you're writing the letter A, when you're writing the letter D, when you're writing the letter Y, what parts of the brain are, in more detail getting activated. So that's the kind of study that's done. And why handwriting, is critical is because it engages so many parts of the brain. If you remember, in one of the workshops, I had covered that reading engages this much part of the brain, but writing engages so much more part of the brain. Um, Coming to the cognitive benefits of handwriting, this is a study that was done in Princeton, and what it concluded, what it found was that there's enhanced memory retention and comprehension when you are writing. There's improved learning outcomes. Whatever you learn through writing, the outcomes of that are far more because you remember that. There's increased brain plasticity. I will come to that later. And neural connections through handwriting. So how does that impact us? So when the notes are handwritten, you will find that the conceptual understanding is better. It improves by 29%. So you remember that when we were kids, and if we would perpetually forget, we would tell the teacher, yaad hi nahi rehta, yaad hi rehta. She would say, okay, read the topic and make bullet points of what did you learn from the topic. And the moment you start writing bullet points, the brain knows that I have to recollect this information and I have to write. All of a sudden, the brain starts paying more attention to your reading than it did earlier. And because it has paid more attention, it remembers when you're making the bullet points. And when you're actually writing it, that information is getting cemented in the brain because there's your visual, faculty that's involved. There's your kinesthetic faculty that's involved. There's so much other parts of the brain that's involved. So you remember. In fact, you would also remember that whether you wrote on the left side of the book or you wrote it on the right side of the book. And so there's so much memory involved when you're writing. So compare your handwritten meeting notes to the typed ones, and you will instantly know the difference that we are talking about. That's the cognitive benefits of handwriting. Coming to, okay, I would like to do a small experiment here. So all of you, if you can just switch on your camera for a moment, it would be helpful in this exercise. So what I would like you to do is, if you have a paper and pen, then just write your own name. So like if it's me, I would write, and even if you don't have right now, if you can just with your fingers, if you, wherever you're sitting, just with your hand, write your name. So for example, if it is Meena ji writing, so she will write M-E-E-N-A, Meena. So do that, see how it feels. And now write your name, but now in a different way. Now you air write your name with the other hand. So if this is your dominant hand, for me, right hand is my dominant hand. So right now I wrote my name with right hand. Now I will I will write it in the air with my left hand, my dormant hand, my non-dominant hand. So when I'm writing now, Preeti, and if you're writing Shabana, if you're writing Ruchika, see the effort it takes. Type in the chat box, do you find a difference in the effort that it took writing with your dominant hand and writing with your dominant hand? And in all probability, unless you are ambidextrous, it would have taken more efforts to write with your left hand because that connections are not currently present. Thanks for answering, Shavana ji and Ruchika ji. The neural connections for writing with this hand are not present. And that's why the effort is more. Yeah. And how this also impacts, I will take it in the next slide. I think I was writing opposite. Okay. You can do the exercise again, Meena ji, now also or later on. So see the difference in the efforts that it takes to write with your dominant hand and with your dominant hand. So that's what I'm talking about, the cognitive benefits of handwriting. And this experiment shows that how it impacts the handwriting process from the brain to the hand. Now, over the years, these become such strong neural pathways that we do not even think that what is the brain doing when I decide right now to pick up the pen, to hold it in my hand and to write, let's say Maven, M-A-V-I-N. I do not even realize what's happening internally when I choose to pick up the pen, put it on the paper, draw a straight line, then draw a diagonal line. I mean, there are so many sets of instructions that are originating from different parts of the brain, depending on what you're writing. Are you writing something that you know? Are you writing something that you don't know? Are you drawing? So depending on that, there are various parts of brain that gets engaged. Those electric impulses are traveling through these neural pathways, through the neurons. They come to your spinal cord. I mean, they travel via that. Finally, they travel through the muscles, right into our fingers. And then the finger decides to move. And if you notice, our handwritings are pretty tiny. We are talking about millimeters, not even centimeters. And it does those fine formations effortlessly. You do not have to think that I have to write Maven. So let me remember, how did I write M in school? Yeah, okay, there was a straight line, then a diagonal, then a diagonal, then a straight. You don't do that. It just happens effortlessly. But in the background, this is what is happening. And it's a miracle. Our body is a miracle. And we are miraculous beings. We are using our faculties in different ways every day to do new things. So this is what the handwriting process involves, from brain to the hand. Yeah. The motor skills and fine motor coordination, I mean, this is what I just spoke about. And that's why the fine motor skills and even the gross motor skills, if you remember, in preschool, if you go right now, there are many different kind of toys, which in our times, we used to play with atta. If mama was atta gund rahi hai and we are getting curious, she would take out little atta and give it to us. Ke lo khelo. And then we would play with that atta, God knows do what not. And I remember I used to like khichdi as a child. And when I was like really young, like under one, I would really enjoy khichdi. And I have a picture, like when I look at it, I laugh. Khichdi is all over me, except probably in my mouth. So that's the curiosity. And that when we are doing these activities, what we are really doing is fine tuning our motor skills. And when we learn to do that, through different activities, you'll be amazed at what it brings on the table. If you happen to have a paper and pen right now, just draw a spiral. Yeah, draw a spiral, maybe 3-4 layers at least. Type done when you have done it, when you have drawn the spiral. I'll give you a moment to do that. Type done when you are done drawing this spiral. And for those of you who are watching the recording, if you don't have paper pen, pause the video, go get paper pen. It's a very interesting exercise. Thank you, Dr. Ruchika, for reply. Now, start again and retrace the spiral. So whatever you just drew, you again draw on the same thing, on the same spiral, again redraw. Trace those lines again and draw it. And tell me on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very easy and 1 being difficult, how was the experience? Was it very difficult 1 or was it very easy 5? Type it in the chat box what your experience is. 1. Imagine that's the spiral that we just drew. Nobody else has drawn for us. It's my own writing. But when I have to retrace it, it doesn't really happen the same way. And that's the beauty of our motor skills, fine motor skills. And the more we do the practice of this, the easier it becomes to do different kinds of tasks, which I think I'll come to in the next slide. So for example, if you see, this one was about the motor skills and fine motor coordination. And when you add the visual element to it, imagine the possibilities that open up. So as a child, when the child is writing, as I said, the spacing initially doesn't come for the child. So if I'm writing that I am Dr. Ruchika, so IAMDR, actually as a child, I wouldn't write Dr. Ruchika. So yeah, I am Ruchika. There would hardly be any spacing, but you learn, you observe that, okay, a word means that it's a combination of letters. Then when I start a new word, I need to have a space for the reader to know that this is a new word. So you get the visual feedback, there's an integration that happens, and then you start having spaces between words. Now, as you keep doing this more often, how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you are able to have this visual connection while writing, the other things that you do, like throwing a ball, catching the ball, it is a combination of the visual, of the speed at which the ball is going, the bounce with which it will come back, and you adjusting your hands to catch that ball. It's a complex functions that happening inside the brain. But when you have done the foundation of writing these fine things, it's easier. Now, if I have to catch a ball, if I have to catch a bouncing ball, it's not difficult. But for children who are more sedentary, who are more reliant on digital media for their entertainment, for even doing their homework, you will find, that their ability for a simple exercise like catching a ball is not really easy for them. They struggle. They wonder कि वो किस direction में मेरे को जाना है. Like, if you throw a ball, your brain knows that it will come in this direction. It will bounce back and come in this direction. But for children who have not exercised their fine motors and gross motors sufficiently, will not be able to gauge in which direction will the ball come back, how distant from where I'm standing will it come, and what body movement is required to catch it, up, middle, down. These are complex calculations happening. And when you have exercised your brain enough as a child, these things become easier. Or else it's not that you can't do it, because brain has beautiful neuroplasticity, but the effort to do that is so much more. It's like moving mountains later on. So that's the beauty of your visual and motor integration. When you do that in your writing, you're training your brain to do that in various real life scenarios. So that's as far as the connection of the brain, the various advantages you get. One, by learning handwriting as a child, and by continuing to learn and by continuing to write as an adult. Why? For two aspects. I'll take the first one here. When you do these kind of practices, so you may wonder, कि क्या practice करना है? How do I practice writing? Because we are not in school right now where you get homework and you have to write. But our life, we have so many goals in our life, in different areas of our life, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's relationships, whether it's career, whether it's money, whether it's self-development, whether it's pleasure, going out on trips, leisure time. All these, we have certain goals. Now, in order to do that goals, you do things, which are required to be done. And when you write about it, you get that much more closer to your goals, because some of the things that I shared in the previous slide is just some of the benefits that you have by writing. So what are the things that you can do? One is you can journal, write about your daily experiences and reflections, make to-do lists rather than on mobile, note-taking. It improves your comprehension and retention during learning. You can have a specific morning rituals. And I know people who are deeply committed to connect with themselves. They have half an hour, 1 hour of, morning rituals that they do. And it includes things like meditation, things like exercising, like writing, doing affirmations, doing mantra jap. It could be anything depending on what are the techniques you're using. But yes, when you include writing in that, the other things that you are doing has more impact on you. If you're using writing as a tool. So that's the beauty of, handwriting. And I have done a session on this platform on different kinds of journalings. There were some 9 types of, journaling that we had spoken of in that session. And I cannot impress upon the beauty, the power of thought journaling. All the thoughts that are making you busy, overthinking, anxious, stressful, sad, unhappy, disappointed, guilty, all these thoughts that are stopping you from doing the things you would like to. When you do thought journaling, what you're essentially doing is taking that all out and putting it on the journal. And now the space is free. And be mindful of how you utilize your time after thought journal. And that is very critical. That's why, the clients that I work with, we have a very, very, very proper morning schedule to follow, so that the practice of thought journaling is not wasted. The space that's created here, how do you then fill the necessary things in that space? So that's some of the practical tips that I can give you for integrating handwriting into daily life. There are so many more, but keeping the time in essence. So again, as I said, I cannot impress upon the beauty, the power of thought journaling. If there's one thing that you can take from this session, I would say, if you have taken thought journaling as one takeaway from the session, you are in for a wonderful ride. You are in for a beautiful experience and an empowering one. So that's about the practical tips. And one thing that scientists across the globe are working on is neuroplasticity. For a long time, scientists thought that whatever you're born with, the genetics is so critical that nothing can change in your life because you're born with certain things. But as there's more research coming on, the scientists realize that there is a concept of neuroplasticity. And what is neuroplasticity? It's like the brain it's obviously living, but if you nurture the brain in the right way, the brain can expand. The brain can, not physically, but the brain can expand. You can initiate more neural connections. So, I mean, neuroplasticity, as the term goes, also known as brain plasticity, is the brain's ability to change both its physical structure and its functional organization in response to training and experience, which can happen throughout the life. You know, when you go through a trauma, you would have realized that for some days, for some months, your brain stopped functioning. You know, when you look at grief, when someone has lost a loved one, uh, they are lost. Their brain stops functioning because that incident has impacted the brain. So there are those functional things that get impacted with your life experiences. When you give different kind of experiences to your brain, the brain responds in different ways. So when you give different kind of patterns to the brain starts the change internally. New neural pathways are formed. So I think there are few who had attended the workshop of self-esteem. So there was the 6 days that we did certain exercises. So initially those patterns were not easy to write, but by the 6th day most of the participants had come to a fair degree of competency of writing that particular letter or pattern. So the brain forms new neural connections, and when you continue doing that, the impact on the brain is ripple effect. And neuroplasticity, today the scientists have realized that this is what it does. But if you look at our ancient wisdom, it talks a lot about neuroplasticity in different ways. So it's nice that the science today is giving us evidence that it is possible. And the acceptance of the concept is much more, because human beings are logical beings. Till the time you don't give a reason why it is true, we are not ready to believe it. So here's the reason, here's the proof, here's the evidence, here's the work done over decades, which shows that it is possible. Neuroplasticity is possible, and you have the power to choose the life that you want to lead and not be at mercy of कि अरे ये तो मेरे genes में है, मैं तो इसका कुछ नहीं कर सकता. That's not the fact. You have the power within you. How much are you ready to bring that change is an individual choice that you make. And in my experience, I have found handwriting to be a very simple and powerful way to bring in neuroplasticity. And that's why today I have taken the topic of how brain is impacted, because everything and anything that we do, it all comes from here at the first level. And then there are concepts of mind, which is not the scope today. But yeah, that's what it does. And so from writing probably the first birthday card to your friend, to jotting down your big ideas, handwriting is our silent cognitive companion. It's not just to communicate, but it's a bridge between the mind and the body, the thought and the action. So I would say that keep writing. Your brain will really thank you when you keep writing. And with that note, thank you to all our brains that are currently listening to the information and processing it, that how will it benefit me? How will it benefit to achieve my goals? So take your learnings and apply that in your everyday life. And with that, I would like, from my end, the session is, the information I wanted to share is complete. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them.